and welcome to this week's episode of the Six Figure Success Club. Today, we are joined by Katrina Owens, who is the founder of Knockout Directive, a brand and publicity consultancy empowering passionate service providers and lifestyle brands with the magic of PR, or public relations. So we are going to talk all about PR and how to bring it into your business. Let's get into it. Thank you for joining us. So Katrina, could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, my name is Katrina Owens. I'm a personal branding and publicity consultant. So my consultancy is called Knockout Directive, and we help service providers, founders, solopreneurs develop their personal brand and then understand how they can use public relations to amplify it, secure new business, grow their brand, become an international brand. Yeah, that's a little bit about what we do. We started in a corporate, kind of a more corporate world where we worked with a lot of organizations, but my passion really is with helping business owners like me grow their brand and business.
I love that. Can we kind of take it back a step? When you say PR, can you give us kind of a brief explanation of what PR is? Because when I think of PR or the word PR, I'm imagining like being an A-list celebrity and I've got a publicist. So can you just give us a little sneak peek into what PR actually is?
Yeah, and that's actually a very common misconception. We think PR is like glitz and glam and for celebrities and really large organizations. But for businesses like mine and a lot of the listeners out there, PR looks like so many things. Yeah, there's a media relations component, which could be like going on your local news, could be going on podcasts, but it's also networking with other businesses in your community, collaborating, maybe even doing Instagram lives. There's networking within your industry too. So maybe there are industry publications or organizations that you can get involved with, working with influencers. And when I say influencers, that could be your traditional online influencer, like the ones with lots of followers and high engagement, or it could be influencers in a more a little bit more authentic sense where it's the people in your world or your universe that actually drive business to you. And how can you formalize partnerships or referral programs with those people to continue to grow your business? It can also be community relations. How do you support your local community? Yeah, it really touches so many different facets. So it's not just like the glitz and the glamour. It really is at the core like relationship building. And how many authentic relationships can you build with others to support your business growth?
I like that. So it's more about how you get your business in front of other people and the activities that you're doing to kind of spread the word about what you do and not walking down a red carpet.
Exactly. I mean, like we can all have red carpet dreams, and I hope that's in all of our futures if we want it. But really, it is like, expanding the reach of your brand and, really getting it in front of more eyes using all of these different methods that are available to us, even though sometimes it feels like they're not. They sometimes feel out of reach. Like we think, oh, like, why would they have me on TV? But your local news is always looking for feel good stories. You just have to learn how to pitch yourself and get the angle right. And timing can be a big reason why something lands or not. So, yeah, how many eyes can you get in front of and how can you expand that reach?
Which is obviously key for the success of any business.
Yes.
I think PR should be more of a focus for the majority of business owners because it's about getting in front of your ideal client and more audience members in different ways
Yeah.
so that more people are interested in what you're doing.
100%. And that's actually why I'd started my more personal brand entrepreneur support programs, because I noticed that we weren't harnessing PR like we should. It's so accessible to us. There are so many opportunities for a business of any size to engage in PR efforts. So that's why I started, educating a bit more on what PR actually looks like, because I'm like, we're missing an opportunity here, a major one.
And so did your consultancy, that the idea of the work that you do would be to kind of partner with business owners or solopreneurs and you would help them find the right PR opportunities for themselves?
Yeah. So there is this large component of pitching ourselves to opportunities and learning how to do that. But on the same side of things, we also want to make sure we're developing a personal brand that receives these opportunities. So a lot of the time when we're so focused on pitching and doing this outreach, we forget that our owned media channels, like our social media and our website, can actually become like receptors for opportunities if we can position ourselves as an expert on a topic. So when I work with a lot of personal brands, we really get into the details of like, okay, how can you position yourself as an expert on something that no one else in your industry is talking about? Because that's when people want to hear from you at speaking events or, on a podcast. So it's really refining a personal brand that attracts these opportunities and not just focusing on the outreach component, which is important too. But I always say if we're not receiving opportunities organically, it's probably because there's a bit more work to be done on the brand to, attract that kind of thing.
I think that's really important, doing both, like not
Yes,
leaving it to, in any situation, I don't think you should put all of your eggs in one basket, as it were. I think you should look at both sides. But I think
totally.
you're right. I think if you're, it's kind of the same with doing social media ads and not ads. Like you need to make sure that the organic growth that you've got is working before you then
Mhm.
put money into paying for the ads. And it sounds like it's a similar thing with PR. If you're getting those kind of inbound leads from whatever it is that you're doing, then it shows that your messaging and the way that you're talking is positioning you as an expert, and it's drawing in the right sort of people. And then you compare that with the direct outreach of going and finding opportunities yourself.
Yes, 100%. I always think we should be working on all things at once. Like relying on outreach efforts are great, but the best way to even ensure that those outreach efforts are successful is by making sure that your personal brand is really dialed in too. Because it's one thing to do all this outreach, but you're going to increase your chance of receiving a yes if you can have a really solid social media presence, website, the content to back it up. That really is what's going to seal the deal for a lot of these opportunities. So it really is like the root of everything is your personal brand.
I think, yeah, I completely agree. And if let's say I'm a little solopreneur, I have not
Yeah.
yet started my PR journey, are there things that I can be looking at to make sure I've kind of nailed my messaging and my brand? Are there things that I can be looking at specifically, in what I'm doing?
Absolutely. So, one of the most important pieces is looking at all of your competitors and taking note of how they talk about things and what they talk about a lot, and maybe what they're not talking about. So, understanding where their gaps are, as well as maybe some of their perspectives that actually conflict with yours. Those present amazing opportunities for you to refine your position and your messaging even further. We don't have to call people out. We don't have to get on our social media and say, so and so over there is saying this, but this is why I disagree. We just subtly integrate that messaging into our content, and then it attracts that ideal client that may not be attracted to someone else's perspective or method of doing things. So, understanding who your competitors are out there is really that crucial first step. And that helps you get really clear on what makes you unique and how you can actually start to land similar opportunities to your competitors without having to like justify why you're better. You're not better, you're just different.
Mm,
And that's actually even more spectacular because there's opportunity there, as opposed to like always living in this really competitive headspace. We're now carving out our own really unique position where the competition doesn't feel so fierce because we're now owning our unique space.
yeah, absolutely. And when someone's looking at their USP, I quite often find that um, business owners are sort of nervous about calling out their USPs because they think that
Mhm.
there's nothing special about them. They're just, let's take business coaching, for example. There's lots of business coaches. They all do the same thing, but it's the little things that you do differently that really make the difference. So, for example, when I'm looking for a coach, I want someone that's got similar interests to me.
Mhm.
So one of my coaches is really into Disney, which I also am. And it just
Love
kind of
it.
means that I've got things I can talk to about them. I can relate to them about something that's not business related, because I think building that kind of personal relationship is important. But also,
Mhm.
I really like the way that she runs her business and the things that she focuses on. So it's the two things together. I think the way that you do business and the things that you teach, but also what you're like as a person and the kind of the personality that you bring into your business as well.
Absolutely. And I think those inherent qualities are one of the strongest attributes of your personal brand, right? Because at the end of the day, we attract our ideal clients a lot of the time based on like how well we work together, especially when it comes to coaching. Like you want to make sure that there's a comfortable rapport there and that, there's this really nice energy between the two of you. And I think that speaks for like any service provider, any business owner, by letting some of these like inherent qualities, so just the way that you are as a being, kind of bleed through your personal brand, you'll get closer to your ideal client because they're just attracted to your energy, your warmth, your sense of humor, whatever it is. Like those are all really important aspects of your personal brand. And that's why podcasts or speaking engagements, even showing up like on an Instagram live or just talking to the camera on Instagram, that's such an important component of building your personal brand because it allows you to showcase these attributes that are really, really attractive to that wider audience.
Yeah, this is why the trend of like face to camera reels and stories have taken off so much, because it gives you a real way of connecting with your audience, or having your audience connect with you, because they get to see your face, they get to hear you talk, and it's not so much about the kind of static content that we used to post, but really gives that kind of personal touch, and they can hear the way that you say things, and it really just gives them an opportunity to get to know you better.
Yeah, it is interesting how it's really taken off into like a whole new direction. And, I think we underestimate the impact of that a lot too. Like, for a while there, I was like, does anyone even really watch these when I do them? And then you find out people do, and you're like, oh, okay, amazing. I'll keep it up then.
Absolutely. And even if you only get one person, I saw someone this morning actually I was scrolling through TikTok, and there was someone on there who was really successful, and he said that when you do these things, you need to do them despite the fact that no one's going to watch until you're successful. And you're going to do loads of lives or do loads of face to cameras, and there's going to be no one watching. But all of a sudden, there'll be enough people that have seen them that start watching, and then you'll feel like you're a success and it was completely worth it. But I thought was a really interesting point that he's really successful. He was, I think, 7 figures, I think they were talking about. And it was just really interesting that he had the same experience as the rest of us, where you do it to start with and nobody cares, but you need to keep doing it because eventually the right people will care, and they'll start to take notice of the fact that you go live every morning, or you're on your stories 3 times a day, or whatever it is that you're doing. So keep at it, even if it feels like no one's watching.
Yeah, that's actually good advice because I need to do an Instagram live later, and I'm already like, ugh.
It can feel really demoralizing when you
Yeah,
let's say you've gone live every week for 3 weeks and no one's joined any of them. But if you stop, then your audience is going to stop seeing you, and it'll never kind of take off. But continue to do them anyway. Just do them as practice. Like it's good
yeah,
practice for when you're doing podcast interviews like this, for example. If you've done loads of Instagram lives, doing a podcast interview is going to be nothing. And then
totally.
what you'll find is that over time, people will start to realize that you're going live at the same time every week, and they'll know to expect it, and they'll start watching it.
Yeah, I actually saw the same thing. So you know how people can add those question boxes on Instagram. So I had seen some good advice the other day where someone had actually asked a question where it's like, what do I say if no one's asking me a question in my question box? And she had some sneaky advice. She's like, actually, you can write your own questions and just like answer them. She's like, or, well, in addition to doing that, also just doing more and more of them and showing that you're answering those questions, even if it is just a couple, will make people feel more comfortable to ask their questions in the future. And it'll show that you actually answer them, because I think a lot of the time people offer that as a little like engagement sticker on Instagram and then it falls off. So yeah, I feel like all that advice is aligned. And honestly, I believe in that. I know it's hard to like push through sometimes, but I really do believe in like, let's act like we already have the business that we really want. And a lot of that is showing up and continuing to do the thing, even if in the beginning it's uncomfortable or doesn't feel like it's having these major results.
Yeah, for sure. And the more you do it, the more the platforms are going to end up showing it to more
Yeah.
of your following. Because we all know that most of our followers don't see everything that we put out, but the more consistent you are with it, the more Instagram or TikTok is going to show your videos to more people.
Absolutely. Well, that is great advice for my Instagram live later
Well,
today.
So social media is a big part of the business world at the moment. I think most businesses now have got a social media presence. But I'd love to get your take on PR outside of social media. So what's I guess what's the easiest route to market of PR outside of social media that any business owner can kind of start thinking about and get themselves involved in? And then, what can they do after they've done the easiest? Where should they go, kind of thing?
Such a good question. The easiest thing is to like get out there, like leave the house, go to an event, go to a co-working space, go take a course, go get a hobby. Like get out there. It doesn't have to be specifically business related, but the more you can show up and actually form in-person, offline connections, the stronger your network is going to be. So I really focus on becoming famous in your own backyard first. So obviously the dream is to build like international personal brands, but we have to start like in our own communities. And that means getting out into the community and creating really meaningful in-person, offline connections. The more that people can connect with you in person and like share your energy and like really feel connected to you that way, the more successful your business is going to be, and even online. So I know every time I go to an event, I'm going to end up receiving a bunch of new followers and connections, because that's the benefit of leaving the house and putting yourself in front of a brand new audience. So I even say, like, before we spend all of our time just living on our phones, let's make sure like once a week we are going to an event, or even just grabbing coffee with one person if an event feels intimidating. That one coffee date can have like a major impact as well. And once you do have that in-person connection with someone, they're going to feel more comfortable with you online. So now, okay, you've had coffee and now maybe you follow each other. You can now warm that person up through your content. They get to continuously get to know you through what you're sharing. They might refer you to their friends. They might invest in your services. So I always say, like, to anyone growing a business, the biggest impact you can have is when you actually like take it offline. Just take it offline.
Completely counterproductive, but I agree. I think it's so important getting out and actually meeting people in person, because if you think about the way that online marketing works, the amount of times that someone has to see your content and see your face before they'll buy is huge. But if you've met that person in person and you've struck up a conversation with them, even if it's got nothing to do with business, they'll be more inclined to go and look at what it is that you're doing, and they'll feel more comfortable buying from you because they'll have met you and they'll know what you're like.
Absolutely. And I honestly think that being in person is actually a faster way to like get to the end result. Like I know that if I meet someone in person, I'm probably going to be that much closer to working with them as opposed to like keeping the conversation strictly online. It feels counterproductive. I know we're all like so busy, but I had actually spoken to someone early on in my business who at the time she was fairly well established in hers. And she had actually said to me, she was like, I actually don't even go for coffees anymore. I don't have the time. Like it's got to be on Zoom. And I thought to myself, like, I actually don't want my business to ever get to a point where that's the case. Like, how nice to like go for coffee and meet with someone in person. Like, I just think that that's the way to really build up your brand and have impact. So I really encourage business owners to, don't sit in front of the computer all day. The magic happens like away.
And also it's just much more fun. Like I've obviously just come out of the corporate world, where I did just sit on video calls most of the time. I only had to leave my house for corporate like once a month, because since COVID. So yeah, the fact that for business I can go out and do things and I can go to events and I can meet people in real life is what makes it so exciting. And especially as I'm so extroverted, being able to talk to people not over a video screen, I find really like uplifting, and it gives me energy, and it's much more entertaining than sitting in front of as good as the video conferencing solution. They're amazing. They do such an amazing job, and it means that I can talk to you and we're not even in the same country. But it doesn't replace the fact that doing it in person is way more fun.
Yes, way more fun. And then it can lead to other opportunities too, right? Like anyone that I've ever met in person, they kind of stay in my universe and they're always the first ones to be like, hey, you know what? I have an event coming up. Would you like to speak at it? Or, I'd love for you to run a workshop. And that's because they've been able to actually experience your energy and your vibe in person. Like,
Mm,
yes, showing up on camera and doing all of these things is important to do in addition to this offline work. But, PR is like this relationship building tactic. So it's like, okay, we got to get in front of people physically to really start to spread our energy and like get in front of more eyeballs. And if the dream is to like, be a keynote speaker or like do more speaking engagements, well, most of those are in person. So if you can show up in person at the events, you'll probably get that much closer to speaking at them faster
mm.
because, people are already seeing you like in real life.
Yeah, for sure. And when you're at the events as well, so obviously it can feel quite intimidating for people to go to events. I was in an event last year, and I don't find them intimidating. Like I said, I love being around people. I'm a huge extrovert. It's my thing. And I was at an event where I kind of knew the faces of some of the people that were walking into the room. I'd never met them, but it
Mhm.
was obvious that they were kind of part of the event. And I just sort of kind of shooed them to my table and was like, "Do you want to come and sit with me?" Because they looked kind of nervous, and just doing that made them feel so much more at ease because somebody had kind of pulled them into the room, kind of thing, and it was a lot
Yeah.
less daunting for them. And I didn't do that with the intention of then selling them my services. I did it because
Right.
that's just kind of what I'm like as a person. But doing things like that and getting out of your comfort zone and just going with the intention of meeting and talking to new people is the way that I think you should approach doing events. If you go into it with the expectation of trying to sell your services, I think you'll put too much pressure on yourself and it won't end up going that way. But look at it as an opportunity to make connections and to meet new people and to see things from a different perspective, and it'll feel a lot less stressful.
Yeah, and I always say going to events, I mean, like anything, it's a long game. We can't just expect that we're going to go to an event and like have three people say yes on the spot. And I think that's like maybe a misconception that we have because I was like that too. I used to think, okay, if I go to this networking event, it wasn't worth it if I didn't come home with any business. Wrong way to think about it. Because then I noticed, okay, yes, you go to the networking event, maybe you connect with a couple of people, you follow each other. You still have to build up that know, like, and trust factor with that person, and that takes time. So once I realized, and this just took like me understanding from a business perspective how these things work, but I realized, okay, an event that I went to like in July, someone followed me, we stayed connected, then she finally reached out in, like, January to have coffee and then invested in my services. Like, it took that long to have her in my universe, to warm her up to all my content, to really, like, build up that trust with her before she was ready to invest. So, now I look back, I'm like, "Well, I guess that networking event last July, like, wasn't a write-off, even though for months I was like, oh, what a waste of time."
Mm,
They're just not like nothing in business is immediate. In marketing, for some reason, we think like, you know, X equals X. Like, if I do this, I'm getting this, but it's just so not true. Takes
mm.
so many more in between touch points to really like make the sale. And we just have to understand that, especially as service providers. Like, it just takes much longer.
Definitely, and it's putting in the routine of doing things like this so that you are building up essentially that pipeline of potential clients. The more
Yeah.
people you can go out and meet, the more people you can connect with, the higher the likelihood that you'll have kind of a bigger pipeline of clients that like later down the line. I know there was quite a lot of people that I met at events last year that potentially could become clients, but they've also become quite good friends as well. And
Yeah.
we're now kind of trying to coordinate our calendars this year to make sure that we're at the same events so that I get to see them, which is,
Love it.
and that's just the great thing that comes out of doing things like that.
Yeah, that's so great. And I think that's a good point too. Like, we need to get away from this like very transactional mindset. Like, that's actually why I shied away from a lot of networking events that you know how you kind of like try them all, and then some feel like super aligned, and then some are like, that's not really my crew. It was the ones where it felt really transactional, where it was like, okay, we're just like here exchanging who we are and what we do, and then we move on to the next person. Like for me, I wanted to feel like I've built up so much more connection with an individual, and I just realized I had to find a different category of events planned by a different person who was kind of on that same page. And that's fine. You just have to find what works for you. And for me, it really is feeling like I'm friends with some of these people, especially before we start working together.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. It just makes everyone feel a bit more comfortable, a bit more at
Yeah.
home. It makes the whole thing more enjoyable, and it's definitely worth doing. But yeah, I get what you mean about finding events run by different people. So lots of the events that I went to last year, I went to quite a few last year. It was like a year of events. They were all run by people that kind of run in the same circles. So I knew the people that would go. I knew the people that were organising it. I knew the people that were going. But I've actually just signed up this month for a local event in my hometown in Bournemouth. And it's with somebody that the host is someone I've never heard of. I don't know them at all. But it's in my hometown. So I was like, I'm going to give it a go and see what it's like. And it could end up being not that useful, or I could learn something completely different that all of the people that I've previously learned from haven't been teaching, because they have different ways of approaching the same topic, which is to grow your business essentially.
Yeah, and I think it's really good to kind of expand beyond these borders of what we're comfortable with. I did the same thing too. Like I was kind of going to all these events where, it was the same demographic. I really started to like a lot of the people there and became friendly with them. And then I had kind of colleague or connection in the industry invite me to a group of events that she's part of that I never would have went to on my own. But it was funny because it's a membership organization. So I knew that going into the first one. And in my head, I was like, there's no way I'm joining this, but I'll go like just to see what it's all about and like, have coffee. I was like, where do I sign up? So I thought that was really interesting because I had even spun my own assumptions on its head, because I was like, oh, yeah, you know what? This is probably not going to be for me. But then I realized exposing myself to a bunch of like people that I certainly never would have like connected with otherwise, because I tend to stay in my circle. It was actually so beneficial and just like a bit refreshing, like nice to cross paths with others and to like see how a lot of people in this group were much more established in their business. So that felt really interesting to me, because I'm like, yeah, I want to hang out with people who've been doing their business for like 30 years. Like that's much different than me a year and a half in. So it is important to stay open-minded and like try everything. I always say like, say yes to everything once.
I think that's a great philosophy to have, because you never know. Like you said, you went into it thinking, oh, there's no way I'm ever going to buy this, and you ended up buying it. So you never know. You could go to one event and learn from something that you've never heard of, and it could be the greatest thing that you ever learn. Like you just don't know.
Totally.
Cool. So we've covered kind of podcasting and events, and getting out into like the local community and doing things in person, which I think is absolutely key to kind of making your business successful. Let's say we're doing that. What would be kind of the next step if a business owner is listening and they feel like they're doing all of the events, they're guesting on people's podcasts, they're being a guest in other people's groups, but they still don't feel like they're getting the conversion of audience growth to clients. Are there, in your experience, are there things that they could be checking to make sure that they're doing in their content, maybe, or maybe the messaging's not landing? What's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I think that's something that probably a lot of us do experience, because with all marketing, PR included, all of the pieces have to align to make sure that we're producing and converting as many people as possible. And adding on all of these tactics might help you gain more visibility. But if you're not seeing the actual conversions, typically signals that something's not working. So I experienced the same thing in my business, probably, in the fall, early winter. I was doing a lot of PR, but I actually wasn't seeing it convert to sales. And I had to take like a really hard look at my content and realize that some of these things I was talking about at speaking engagements or on podcasts or in my community, I actually wasn't talking about on social media. So I actually invested in like a content coach and content programs to help me refine my messaging that way. Like I knew what I was offering and I knew I had lots of authority building pieces and social proof. I just wasn't using it in a way that was actually beneficial to me. I wasn't using it at all. Like, let's be honest. Because I came from a world of branding where I like to sell without selling. And, we actually can't sell without selling. It leads to no sales. We got to get on there and sell. So I realized that, okay, I could have a beautiful personal brand. I could be doing all of the right PR things. But if I'm not using sales language or actual sales tactics, that could actually be the missing piece to why I'm not selling. So once I invested in my content and really focused on making it like high converting content, everything changed. Like I would say I started investing in my content around like December, January. And then by February, I was seeing, between 2 to 5 discovery calls booked every week through my content. I was seeing super high engagement rates on all of my content that I had never seen before. And that was because I found a way to actually speak to my ideal client in the language they needed to be reached at. We think, oh, we need to be so clinical in our approach. We got to like get like into all the like high level details that we think are really juicy and important. But a lot of the time our ideal client actually isn't there yet. So we have to meet them where they're at. And that means using different language to welcome them into our world. And sometimes it means making some changes to our offers too. I realized I had to offer a couple different ways people could work with me to be able to like build that trust and get them into my universe for the future. But yeah, I think visibility is one thing, but actually knowing that we can like convert a sale is a whole other ballgame. And it's something that we all still have to work on too, right? I always say like, treat your business like the big business you want to have, like big brand energy. And to me, that means taking all of these pieces really seriously. So, we have social media, but are we using email marketing? We have a website, but is it fully built out? Do we have a blog for SEO or is it just more of a landing page? I always say make the investments into these other pieces because that's treating yourself like a big business and you'll increase your reach and your conversions that much more. We can't just like focus on one tactic all the time because they all need to work together for like the greatest success.
Yeah, and that's really important. I think it can feel really intimidating having to be all aspects of your business.
Yes.
But that's just kind of the nature of it when you're starting out. You are head of marketing and head of finance and head of sales as well as the CEO. Like you are the person that's doing all of it. But eventually it will get to the point where you're able to outsource or bring in employees or have someone else do it for you. But to start with, it's definitely the case where you need to focus on the different things that will make the difference and bring in the business that you're looking for.
Absolutely. And I actually think you said something that I really resonated with because we see it a lot with business owners who, for whatever reason, the first thing that they want to outsource is marketing. And I really believe that most business owners, especially when you're in your first like 3, maybe even 3 to 5 years of business, is like, do not outsource the marketing, especially if you are a service provider or a personal brand. Like, you need to have your voice in that content. You need to have an active role in that content and like in that part of your business to attract your ideal clients. Products, kind of a different ball game, but when you're selling a service for people to work with you, you need to be communicating to them. And it's so interesting because, I have people coming to me too, like, oh, I want to outsource my social media. Like, can you just do it? I'm like, no, I cannot because it won't be effective. I can help you tie your social media to your PR efforts and make sure that they're aligned, and I can give you recommendations. But at the end of the day, like, if you are growing your business, you are responsible for building your community. No one can do that for you, unfortunately.
No, because it's so personal, right? The people that are
Yes.
watching your content and that might potentially work with you want you. They don't want someone that isn't you. Um,
Yes.
so making sure, yeah, that it is that you're the one that's responding to your messages and that sort of thing can be the difference between getting
Yeah.
a sale and not getting a sale.
Yeah, it really can. Because I've played with the idea too. I'm like, oh, do I outsource like my DMs? Do I, because we all want to be more efficient. But when I think about, the people that are in my DMs or some of the community engagement that I do, a lot of it is deeply personal. It's things that I've remembered about someone from an event or some of their previous content. And I'm not convinced that someone else could actually do that part because it is relationship building. So I always encourage people to, consider what you're outsourcing. Like get a bookkeeper, get an accountant, like do those things to spend more time like focused on growing your business from a marketing perspective. Because I think that's where you will see the most growth.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I think it kind of comes back to what we said earlier about getting your organic content working before
Yeah.
you pay for ads. It's a similar thing. Like you want to make
Yeah.
sure that your messaging is right and that people are interested in what you're posting
Yeah.
before you're then paying for somebody to do it for you. Because the greatest social media creator or marketer or whatever the title might be, they can only go based on the information that you're giving them. So if you're not sure about what you're selling or what you're offering or the transformation that you offer, if
Yeah.
you can't articulate that well, the social media manager's not going to be able to either, because they can only do it based on the information that you've given them.
Yeah, and I see it a lot too with people that want to start having more passive income through, selling courses or different online products. And unfortunately, we think that it's passive income, but there's so much marketing that has to go into selling these things, especially in the early stages. Maybe you eventually set it up and get things dialed in so that you don't have to be launching it or selling it every day, but in the early days, you got to show up and tell people why they should spend $49, whatever it is, on your course. Because if you're not, they aren't going to. You
Mm-hmm.
have to motivate people and tell them why they need to invest in that transformation. Otherwise, they won't. There are so many other things they could spend their money on. And that's where I see a lot of people kind of not drop the ball, but just probably are a bit misled because we've been told that there are passive income opportunities for us by doing these things. But that doesn't come right away, unfortunately.
No, there's definitely some setup involved in the
Yeah.
beginning before it becomes kind of a multi six-figure passive income stream.
Right.
Amazing. So we've covered getting your messaging right. We've covered podcasting, getting in front of other people's audiences. Are there any other aspects of PR that you think our audience should be aware of or should be thinking about?
Yeah, honestly, the last kind of thing to just think about is something we had like briefly touched on, but it's like making sure that your online presence is as professional and dialed in as possible. So, yes, social media is important, but there's been this move away from like having a website. And if we're building personal brands that want to be, paid a lot of money or offered really juicy speaking engagements or whatever it is, we got to focus on building a website that attracts those opportunities. I see it with a lot of my publicity coaching clients. They come to me, they might have 100,000 followers on TikTok, but they don't have a website. And I'm like, how do you expect to kind of elevate your brand and secure larger opportunities if you don't have this really professional brand presence where people can learn more about you, have your credibility reinforced, have your authority reinforced, and all of those things? So I think with the rise of like Stan stores and some of these, payment processors that allow you to create a landing page within that, we think we don't need it,
Mm.
but focus on building treat yourself like a big business. Like a big business would have a website. It would probably even have a blog. It would probably have like your services outlined and like clearly articulate what it is you're selling. So that's kind of the last thing that I don't think people should skip, even though there's lots of chatter online about like, do you even need a website? I'm like, absolutely yes, Because if there are speakers or personal brands that you admire, 100% they have a website. Go look for it. And then you can use that as inspiration as you build your own, in terms of like, what pages do I need, or how should I be talking about myself, and what information should be on there. For example, the one thing I talk about a lot is like, if you want to have more speaking engagements and like start to position yourself as a speaker, that's got to be a page that is listed on your website. Even if you don't have any speaking opportunities booked yet, put the page on your website and tell people what you talk about. Because if you don't tell people that you're a speaker, they're probably not going to consider you for speaking opportunities, just because they don't know. So that's kind of like this piece of PR that people don't consider. It's like, there's all these outreach efforts, but like, if you're doing outreach and people aren't directed to a platform where they can like learn more about you and be sold on your professionalism, you might not get that opportunity. So that is really like the last piece that gets skipped so much these days, but don't. There's so many great Squarespace template websites out there where you can like easily buy a gorgeous template and just update it yourself. So like, doesn't have to be a huge like brand and web design project either.
No, I love that. I think that's really important. My vision for the Six-Figure Success Club is to take business owners from an employee of their small business to six-figure CEO. So I think this fits in really well. The fact that you need to, I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but like run your business as if it was, like you said, as if it's already the success that you want it to be. So imagine that you're a multi six-figure business. What would other six-figure businesses be doing? So if you don't, like you said, if you don't have a website, perhaps you should have a website. And you mentioned earlier as well, blogging for SEO and that sort of thing. And just think about the bigger picture. It's not just the like everyday posting on Instagram and things that we need to be thinking about. It's the strategy of, how am I going to elevate myself, my brand, and my business so that I can bring in the level of clients that I want?
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes this is where, like, when we look at our competitors, they can sometimes make us feel a bit uncomfortable, because some of our competitors might have like an amazing, gorgeous website that they invested in. And then we're like, like, I feel like I need this, but like, I don't have the money, or I don't have, whatever it is. We make up these excuses or these reasons why we can't get that. But it's like, take the baby step, like, just start with a template and like start there. And that is going to get you closer to achieving that same sort of success that it appears your competitor might have. So instead of like looking at their website and feeling insecure, okay, use it as a launching pad to build your own, so you can start to attract the same type of clients that they are. So yeah, I think it is really important that we think of ourselves as these like big businesses. I don't use the word like freelancer. I try not to use like contractor, these words that make us feel small, because they seem to be a bit more like, I come from a corporate world. So those words were like really meant for people that maybe come on board for a little bit and then we don't need them anymore. Like, no, we're business owners.
Yeah, definitely. The connotations of it kind of diminishes the work that you're doing.
Yes. So it's like, we're business owners. So like, look at all the businesses out there that you engage with every day, whether it's like the hair salon you go to or like the grocery store, whatever it is, like they all have their marketing efforts dialed in. So why don't you? Because you're a business owner.
That's an excellent point. I think that is an amazing sentence to end the episode on today. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was so great.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for listening. My key takeaways from today's episode. My first one would be to get out from behind your computer screen. So one of the benefits of running a business is that we can do it from anywhere. So we can do it from home, but that doesn't mean that we should always do it from home. So look for events that are related to what you're doing and what you are selling to your clients, and go to those events and learn things, meet people, and build relationships with people that interested in what you're doing and that are also doing a similar thing to you, because it makes it more fun. And also it's a quicker way of building relationships with potential clients. My second takeaway would be to look at your business as if you are already a six-figure CEO. So what would you be focusing on as a six-figure CEO that you're potentially not looking at now? So the example obviously we gave was, do you have a website that you can send people to that looks really professional? Are you focused enough on the finances of your business and the profitability? You would be doing these things if you were a six-figure CEO. So we need to start doing them now so that we've got the right foundations in place to get us to six figures. And the final one would be to review your messaging and making sure that you're talking to your ideal client in a way that resonates with them so that more of them will convert. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you next time.